Gestational diabetes, also known as gestational diabetes mellitus or GDM, is a condition in which women without previously diagnosed diabetes exhibit high blood glucose, blood sugar, levels during pregnancy, especially during their third trimester. Gestational diabetes is caused by improper insulin responses. This is likely due to the pregnancy-related factors such as the presence of human placental lactogen that interferes with susceptible insulin receptors. This, in turn, causes inappropriately elevated blood sugar levels. Gestational diabetes generally has few symptoms, and it is most commonly diagnosed by screening during pregnancy. Diagnostic tests detect inappropriately high levels of glucose in blood samples. Gestational diabetes affects 3 to 10% of pregnancies, depending on the population studied. Typically, gestational diabetes will disappear after a baby is born. As with diabetes mellitus, in pregnancy in general, babies born to mothers with untreated gestational diabetes are typically at increased risk of problems such as being large for gestational age, which may lead to delivery complications, low blood sugar, and jaundice. If untreated, it can also cause seizures or stillbirth. Gestational diabetes is a treatable condition, and women who have adequate control of glucose levels can effectively decrease these risks. The food plan is often the first recommended target for strategic management of GDM. Women with unmanaged gestational diabetes are at increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes mellitus, or very rarely, latent autoimmune diabetes type 1 after pregnancy, as well as having a higher incidence of pre-eclampsia and cesarean section. Their offspring are prone to developing childhood obesity with type 2 diabetes later in life. And that's a gift you don't want to pass along. Most women are able to manage their blood glucose levels with a modified diet and introduction of moderate exercise, but some require anti-diabetic drugs, including insulin, and that's probably not the optimal option. There's a recent study that had come out which basically suggests that a female giving birth to a daughter is passing the genetics to the daughter, and as the daughter is in the womb, that genetic information is passed to her daughter's eggs. So the grandmother actually is creating the eggs of the daughter. So if the mother, who will be a grandmother one day potentially, is large and diabetic, then she is the sensory information of the environment for the children, and she passes along genetic information, but also epigenetic information. And those are the guys who can turn on the switches or turn them off, and the switches being the genes. And those epigenetic controls can either turn on a switch completely or off completely, or turn it up to a degree. So there's an amount of an issue. So if you have a potential gene that says you're predisposed to having cancer, it doesn't mean you're going to have cancer. But if your epigenetic controls like to push that gene on or turn it on to a degree, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have cancer. But if you tell those epigenetic controls to crank on that cancer switch, then I believe it's highly likely you'll get cancer at some point. So it is imperative that mothers right now with a baby in the womb, and this doesn't matter whether it's a boy or a girl, it's just that the girl has larger ramifications as far as a generational conversation. So if you're a mother and you have a female child in the womb and you give birth to that child, you've imparted, if you're a mother and you have diabetes, you've imparted this predisposition to have diabetes and be obese and deal with all that your whole life. So that's not the greatest gift. But so now that child has to work hard to not be diabetic. So the likelihood that they will be is greater. And so what if they are? Well, then when they have a child, they will have strengthened those epigenetic signals as well as passed on the new set of epigenetic and genetic information to that person's grandchild. So it would be the great grandchild. And so you can see how that can sort of cascade and continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger as time goes on. So what you need is a break in the middle somewhere, somebody who's focused on health to basically inform those epigenetics that the world that they'll be born into requires a fit and healthy person, non-diabetic. So let's not turn those switches on or you won't survive, because it's all about survival. And so if you're large and giving birth, that's just a statement of human success. So you're a successful human once you give birth, because that's kind of the goal. That's kind of like the point for that biological vessel. And so if you're a success, then everything downstream would try to model itself after that successful birth. It's how bacteria can become resistant to various things. It's because the ones who survive are the ones who have the tools and the skills to get past those chemicals, those toxins, those antibiotics. They've mutated a little bit. They've changed some of the information, and that has allowed them to succeed. So they'll pass that information along, and their children and their offspring will be modeled after the success of their parents. So it's vitally important that this be nipped in the bud and controlled. And I mean, if we want affordable healthcare, we got to stop spending it on needless things. So just imagine if we could nix diabetes, basically take it down from that 10 to 12%. And I'm not talking about drugs. I'm not talking take it down by using drugs. I'm talking take that number down naturally. And just imagine, diabetes leads into all these other diseases. And so when you say, oh, he died from a heart condition, well, did he die from a heart condition or did he die from diabetes, which caused the heart condition? You see what I'm saying? Diabetes, I'm sure you could find the numbers, accounts for a astronomical amount of money spent. We have the information. We have one of the greatest gifts human minds have ever given us, and that is the ability to disseminate and absorb information for everyone in the world. Nearly, you could basically do it on any point on the planet, minus caves or deep underwater, maybe some other places. So we've been given that gift. Now let's put it to use.
Thank you for watching. Keep learning and keep it keto. So keto.com.